All right, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about sine and cosine graphs of transformations and how to find the amplitude and all that good stuff from a graph. Okay, so here's this box right here is to just remember some of the stuff. When A and B are real numbers, uh, y equals a sine b theta, a absolute value is the amplitude, we already talked about that, and 2 over b, or 2 pi over b, is your period, or the length of one wave. Okay, and you can see right here that from like the top to the top, that's a period. Okay, or at least one wave, because it starts, goes down, and then ends. Amplitude is the distance from the middle all the way to the top. Okay, or from the middle all the way to the bottom. Those should be equal. Okay. So those values are important. Now we need to go figure this out. Okay, so using this equation, we're going to try to figure out what is the amplitude and what is the period, and then we can build an equation. Okay, so first things first, I'll do this in blue so you can see the difference. Go find the origin, and then go find, bam, right there. So the amplitude would be the absolute value of -4, because that is the highest slash lowest point from the middle graph to the bottom. So your amplitude is 4. Period is going to be a little bit harder to figure out, but as you can see here, okay, I'm going to erase this now. As you can see here, you go from one top of the line over to the other top of the line. So it goes from 0 to a little bit before pi over 2. Okay, and now to figure this one out, it's going to be a little bit rough. So I'll just tell you the answer on this one. But it's going to be 2 pi over 5. Okay, and the reason why I know that is because going all the way to pi, well, this is half pi, which is about 50%. And so this is cut into fourths. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so notice it's cut into 4 equal pieces. So because it's cut into 4 equal pieces, and this one goes a little bit towards the 2/3 mark between the pi over 4 and pi over 2, my best guess is going to be 2 pi over 5. Trust me, on your homework during class, it's going to be way easier than that. So now we can go ahead and write this out. This would be -4 is a cosine function of 5x plus 0. Now the reason why it's 5x is because remember, whatever your period is, it's 2 pi over b, which in other words, the period is 2 pi over 5, so 2 pi over 2 pi over 5. These cancel. I'm left with 1 over 1/5, and that can flip and switch, so that becomes a 5. And that's where I got the 5 that goes right there. Okay? But this is probably the hardest question, so the rest is going to be easy. You can figure out all of these amplitude, period, phase shift, and vertical shift from this question. Now, the phase shift, that's a fancy word for the horizontal shift. Okay, for the horizontal shift, either left or right. So a couple things we got to do first. We have to simplify this. So y equals 1 plus 2 sine. I need to be able to factor this part. Now, let's say they both have a 1/4 in common. So if I pull out the 1/4, I'll be left with theta. But then here's the tricky part. It'd be plus 4 pi over 6. If you were to redistribute the 1/4, it should go back to the way it looked. So that's how you know you factored it correctly. Okay. And then now I'm going to move this 1 plus whatever to the end. Plus 1. I should have done that in black. You know what? I'm going to leave it in red because I'm going to say I moved this to the back. And then in blue, I factored out the 1/4 from both. Okay? So that way you have it in different colors. You can see what I did. Now, amplitude, cake, that's just 2. That's just the number in front. Period. That's the 1/4 we put out. So the 1/4 is acting like that b. So b equals 1/4. So then it's 2 pi over 1/4 divided by a fraction, flip and switch. So that is just 4 times 2. So 8 pi. Phase shift is the fact that you had that 4 pi, that plus 4 pi over 6 inside, but because we're adding it, we're subtracting it. So minus 4 pi over 6. That can be simplified to -2 pi over 3. And then finally, vertical shift, up 1. Now we compare that to the graph, and yes, this graph has been shifted up 1. Okay, notice how this is not perfectly away from the, what's it called? The x-axis. It's like it's been shifted 1 unit up. Okay, you can tell that because this is 3, this is -1. What's in between them is 1. Okay, so it has been shifted 1 unit up. Amplitude, the distance between the center, which I'll do this in a bright blue. So here's kind of like the x-axis that's been shifted up. The distance between these two is 2 units. Okay, phase shift, it has been shifted, and all that good stuff. Okay, now we can try this one more time all by ourselves. I'm going to work this one out with you, and then you guys will work out the rest of the page. Excuse me. All right, so let's see what we got. So first things first, what you want to do, I'll do it in bright red, is find the highest and the lowest point. So here's the highest and the lowest point, and then get to the middle of it. So let's see, between 5 and -1, 2 is right in the middle. So this is what splits this function right down the center. Okay? All right. And so we can see that that is 2 units higher than the x-axis. So because it's 2 units higher, higher, I know this went up 2 units. So we got the vertical shift. So I know that there should be a +2 at the end of this. Right? Phase shift. Notice how up here the highest point is not on the y-axis. That's how you know there is a phase shift. But in this case, the highest point, or lowest point in this case, or this is the highest point, but it could also be the lowest point. But one of the high points is on the x-axis. Sorry, the y-axis in this case. So this one has no phase shift. So the stuff inside of the sine or cosine is going to be in there. Okay. Now we know that when the highest point starts at the x-axis like that, that's going to be a cosine. So I know it's going to look like that because of your previous page. Notice how sine starts at the origin, but then cosine starts here at the top of the y-axis. So that's how we know it's going to be a cosine in that question. All right, and I know it's just going to be a simple x, but now we're going to have to figure out that in a bit. Okay, amplitude. The high point is 3 units, so look what I'm kind of scribbling on the side over here, is 3 units above 2. So then the amplitude is 3, so now I know a 3 goes up here. Finally, the hardest one is going to be our period. So we're going to start it, so I'm going to kind of erase everything we have here. Okay, actually, let me erase it faster. Okay, delete. All right. So I'll do it in a bright red again. So the top, you go from one top to the next top. That is your period. So we started at 0 and we get to about right here in between pi over 4 and pi over 2. That's going to be around pi over 3. Okay? If it's between pi over 4 and pi over 2, it's going to be roughly pi over 3. So pi over 3. That, remember, goes underneath the 2 pi. So 2 pi over 3. This actually becomes, let's see, pi's cancel. Flip the 3, so it becomes 6. So this would be 6x. And there we go. All right, so you guys will be in charge of the next page. Good luck, and I will help you all out tomorrow. Thank you.